Just take a look at this image for a second. On one side, you've got the timeless, human-scale feel of an ancient city, and on the other, the sleek glass and steel of a modern metropolis. For all of human history, we've basically faced the same challenge. How do you build places where people can live, work, and actually thrive together? But the way we'd answer that question has changed a lot. And that contrast really gets to the heart of a huge, fundamental question.
It really is the big question, isn't it? What's the secret? Is it about having the most detailed blueprints imaginable, the strictest regulations, the absolute tallest towers? Or is it about something else entirely?
Well, for a very, very long time, the answer wasn't found in some 1,000-page legal document. It was much simpler. It was guided by a set of core, foundational principles that allowed urban life to grow and take shape organically. Okay, so let's explore that older approach. We're going to look at how historic Islamic societies organized their cities. And the key thing here is they weren't using rigid, top-down plans. Instead, it was all about a shared understanding of community and responsibility. So where do these guiding principles actually come from? Well, according to our source material, the rules for city life came directly from Islamic Sharia, and this was based on three main pillars. First, you have the Quran. Then there's the Sunnah, which are the traditions and practices of the Prophet Muhammad, so think of it as practical guidance. And finally, you had the consensus of scholars, who would interpret these sources to deal with new situations. This created a foundation for everything that was incredibly flexible, yet still deeply principled. But of course, as the world modernized, this principled approach started to fade away. To see what replaced it, we're going to turn to a specific case study: Egypt and its massive challenge with unplanned urban growth. And the shift was pretty dramatic. As that old framework of shared principles got pushed aside for modern development goals, the result wasn't orderly progress. It was just chaos. You had growth that was reactive, sprawling, and pretty much completely unplanned. And this really shows you the real-world impact. This chaos wasn't just, an eyesore. It had severe consequences. The source points to haphazard urban sprawl that just stretched for miles. You had industrial factories popping up right next to family homes. And this put a massive financial strain on the authorities, who were left trying to clean up the mess and provide infrastructure after the fact.
So what was the official response to all this chaos? Well, Egypt's answer was to fight back with laws. A lot of them. As you can see here, for over a century, Egypt tried to legislate its way out of the problem. The source material breaks this whole struggle down into three phases. You've got the early regulations from 1880 to 1940, then a post-war development phase, and finally, the modern era of comprehensive planning from 1982 onward, which led to the laws that are in place today. And this brings us to the real heart of this explainer. What happens when you take a modern, incredibly complex law and you measure it against one of those simple, ancient principles? The source uses a single, really powerful principle from Islamic jurisprudence as its measuring stick. And it's a simple but profound idea. Repelling harm is prioritized over bringing benefit. So, in other words, the first job of any rule isn't to create some potential good, but to prevent a definite harm. The specific piece of modern legislation getting put to the test is Egypt's Unified Building Law of 2008. This is the big, comprehensive rulebook that's supposed to govern all construction and planning today. And this gets to the absolute heart of the critique. The study asks, do these modern, super detailed laws actually succeed in preventing harm? For instance, do they stop a factory from being built where its pollution could hurt a neighborhood? Or are they just managing the logistics? Dictating the paperwork for the factory, but not asking that deeper, more fundamental question of whether it should even be there at all. So ultimately, this whole analysis of one country's laws brings up a universal issue for cities all over the world. It's about a timeless question in planning and what this tension between detailed rules and guiding principles means for our future. We come right back to this image because it just perfectly captures that central tension. How do we build for the future with all of its modern demands, without losing the wisdom that's embedded in the legacy of our past? And there it is. The ultimate challenge isn't about choosing one over the other. It's about finding a balance. It's about integrating our necessary, detailed modern regulations with those timeless, human-centered principles that have guided successful communities for centuries. So we'll leave you with this final thought. As we design and build the vast, complex cities of tomorrow, how do we make sure we're not just following the rules on a checklist, but are also honoring the simple, powerful principles of the past?